Rocky Top Insider presents the RTI Lowdown with Bob Baskerville and Chris Lowe.
Welcome. Time for another edition of the RTI Lowdown. I'm Bob Baskerville, your host, joined as always by my friend and a connected guy, important guy. I'm lucky to even be sharing the screen with him, but I always love doing it. It's Chris Lowe. Chris, how are you, man?
I'm great, Bob. Now, listen, I'm not the one that's got courtside seats, so I don't know about who's more connected versus the other. So, it's always good to spend my Sunday evenings with you and all the fans out there, even though it's not probably the best weekend outside the Lady Vols softball team. Well, what an exciting team to watch they are, man. They got it going on right now. Walk off LSU today, but outside the Lady Vols softball team, not a lot to cheer for in Tennessee sports the last few days. Certainly going back to the Lady Vols loss in hoops in the tournament.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned them, though. Shout out to the Lady Vols softball team because they are a wagon this year so far, man. They just loaded, and it was the first time where earlier in the week, Carlin Pickens was injured and had a lot of people on edge, but that pitching staff for Karen Weekly's so deep this year. I mean, Carlin's obviously the best, and you want her out there, but it's a pretty loaded team this year. It's kind of cool to see.
Yeah, a lot of fun to watch play too. If you hadn't had a chance to get over and watch them play, it is a happening and very, very comparable to what Tony Vitello built in baseball. The way they play, their style of play, just the culture that Karen has built there around the program. They're not just sort of Johnny come lately. This has been a program that's been a top tier elite program now for a while. It would be nice to see them cash it all in this year. And I think they've got the kind of team that's capable of doing that, Bob.
Yeah. Well, hey, we got to cling to something. So let's be glad we got that because we're going to wrap a lot up today. We got a good show for you. We have officially entered the postseason with the SEC tournament starting this coming week, followed, of course, by the granddaddy, the NCAA tournament. It is just around the corner. About this time next week, we'll be assembling the field of 68. We'll know what the fate is. We'll talk about Tennessee men's and how their team finished the regular season, how the week ahead in Nashville stacks up for the Vols. We'll also share our thoughts on what has happened to Lady Vols basketball as Kim Caldwell's crew has entered organizational code red territory. I don't think that's an overstatement. It's pretty messy right now. And they still have at least one game left to play. So what's that going to look like? We're going to talk about it. And we'll recap a busy week that just concluded for Josh Elander's baseball Vols, who played 5 games this past week. How did the boys fare? We'll discuss all that with you and look ahead to the gauntlet of SEC play that starts next weekend for Vols baseball in Athens, Georgia, against nationally ranked Georgia team. It's going to be a tough one to start it all off. So a lot to cover, but before all of that, let's give a shout out to our sponsor. This episode is brought to you by the Tate Insurance Group. If you're in the market for a great locally based insurance professional to help you with your home, your car, your business coverage, you don't need to look any further. It's the Tate Insurance Group. And as always, appreciate their partnership with the Lowdown. Topic A for today, though, is Tennessee men's basketball. The Vols regained full control of their SEC tournament destiny a few days ago, earlier in the week, before letting it slip away in another up and down week heading into the conference tournament in Nashville. The Vols got off to a great start this week. It was a get-right game. They flexed their inside game en route to a 78-59 rout of South Carolina. I don't know, Chris, in this one, no Nate Ament, but no problem for the Vols. It was pretty simple, but it was an effective game plan for Rick Barnes. Take advantage of an undersized, poor rebounding Carolina team, and man, did they ever do it.
I thought they would win pretty easily going into that game, and they did, even without Ament. South Carolina just is a team that's limping toward the finish, and their own coach Paris, may not make it. I don't know, but that's one of those games where I don't know. Did you see before the game? I don't know if there was someone online or someone's posted of pictures from the corner up high in the corner of the arena, like 2 minutes before the start of the game, or maybe 2 minutes into the game. Might be 2 minutes into the game. That's a big arena. If you ever been in that arena there in Columbia, probably seats 18,000 people. Bob, there couldn't have been 2,000 people in the arena. Yeah. Just a ghost town. And so I just knew Tennessee would have to play horribly to not win that game. And they did exactly, as you said, what they needed to do. They pounded a smaller, leaner team inside and just controlled the paint, which is what has been their – when they played their best basketball this year, Tennessee, for the most part, that's what they've done, is they've been able to use their size and their depth to get the ball in. Even when they haven't finished that great, they just have generated so many second chance opportunities that they've just beaten some teams into submission that way. And certainly that was the case against the Gamecocks.
Yeah, it sure was. The Vols shot 54% from the field, put together a season high edge in points in the paint. Tennessee scored 56 points in the paint, only 18 for South Carolina. So you can kind of put this together where this advantage lied. The bigs got well in the paint, if only for one night, but we saw our big guys dominate on second chance points, like you said. JP Estrella, 22 points, 10 of 13 from the field. Felix Okpara, 20 points, 10 of 14 from the field. Jacoby Gillespie had a different kind of game. He didn't score a lot, but he was still very, very effective. He had 8 points, 12 assists, and only 1 turnover. And we're going to have to talk a little more about Jacoby here in a few minutes, but that was a great game. The Vols as a team only had 6 turnovers for the game. They only had 1 turnover in the second half. So they weathered the storm in their first test without Nate Amen on the floor. Now, full disclosure, Chris said it, I'll say it. South Carolina's not a good team, pretty bad actually. But to me, it was just nice to see Tennessee do what was expected of them to do, because Vegas had a little bit of skepticism. I think Tennessee was only an 8.5-point favorite in this game. I felt that this was like, no way they don't win by double digits. But the fact that Vegas had that out there kind of spoke volumes of where Tennessee has been the last few weeks.
Yeah, I've looked at some of those lines going into games. I think Tennessee was, against Missouri, a 3.5, 4-point favorite at Missouri. Missouri's a much, much better basketball team than South Carolina, and certainly a much harder place to play.
Right.
Columbia West is opposed to Columbia East, but that's one of those games that if you lose that game and you're Tennessee, even without a minute, you really got to scratch your head and wonder, all right, where is this team as they headed down the stretch? I never really felt like Tennessee would lose that game, and certainly as you got into that game, they controlled it pretty much the whole way, which they should. I mean, again, that's not a game you lose if you're a team that's got has any plans at all toward making a run at all in the postseason, the NCAA tournament.
Yeah. So with that win, and also due to timely losses for both Missouri and Kentucky on Tuesday night, Tennessee was back in full control of their SEC tournament destiny. They were in 4th place all by themselves, which would mean if they could see things through to the end of the season, they would get a double bye in Nashville. All that extra rest, great situation. All they had to do was win on Saturday in the regular season finale at Thompson Bowling Arena at Food City Center against Vanderbilt. Easy enough, right? Right? Well, about that, the Vols turn in a no-show start of the game performance, fall behind by a lot, run out of time to finish the comeback, lose to Vanderbilt 86-82. Chris, you were there. This one was, in a word, brutal from what I could see.
Well, you're being kind. That's about as dispirited a start for a Tennessee basketball team at home as I've seen in a long time. We've seen them blow leads this year a couple times at home. They did so against Kentucky. They did so against Alabama. And this was a game where, I don't know any other way to say it, Bob, and Vanderbilt just looked more prepared, more ready to play. They looked like it meant more to them. That game meant more. And I can't get inside anybody's mind, or I'm not inside that locker room. And I don't know that, but just watching the game, it just didn't look like it was that important to Tennessee. Tennessee had much more of a laissez-faire type attitude. You know, sometimes, and this is not an excuse, sometimes that happens on senior day. You know, and I know that the kids on this team, the seniors, how much they mean to Rick Barnes, and certainly kids like Felix and Jacoby turning down more money to come back closer to home to play his senior year. And sometimes that has an adverse effect. And maybe that was part of what happened Saturday. But, turning the ball over as much as they did to start the game, just not getting good shots, getting just murdered in the paint, which should not happen that whole game, really. And it looked like a Tennessee team, honestly, that just, if we win, we win. If we don't, we don't. And you just don't hardly ever see that out of a Rick Barnes coach team. And they just did not look at all like they were ready to go. And I think that's the thing. Listen, Mark Byington's done a heck of a job. Man, he is a good basketball coach. That's a good team. I think they hit a little bit of a wall there for a couple of weeks, Vanderbilt did. But when they play well and shoot well, they can beat a lot of teams. So I don't think there's it's not an embarrassment to lose to Vandy, because Vandy has and will beat a lot of teams. I think it's the way Tennessee played, Bob, the way they started, the lack of energy, the lack of focus, the lack of discipline, the kind of things that you just never, ever see out of his team, certainly at home. That's 3 losses in the conference this year at home. And they've all been a little bit different. The first 2, as I said, they lost leads. This one, they just, from the get-go, never led and made a decent push there at the end. But as I sat there and watched that game on into halftime in the second half, I don't know about you, I never really had a feel that Tennessee was going to win that game.
Yeah, look, you brought up something that really just caught my ear, so to speak, about Tennessee coming out disinterested. Vanderbilt was in a situation where if they win the game and some other things happen, they could end up getting the number 4 seed, which is the way it played out. But if they lost and some other things happened to them, Vanderbilt could have been as low as 9th in the seeding, which means they wouldn't have had a single bye, let alone a double bye. So the game meant a lot to them because of all the variable nature of the standings. Tennessee, meanwhile, could only slip to, I believe, like 6th or 7th seed, which meant they were guaranteed a single round bye. So it's not of the nature of a Rick Barnes team to mail it in. I'm not insinuating that, but the stakes were higher for Vanderbilt, apparently, because you're right, the way they responded. They come out and it's 6-0 in the blink of an eye, and then it was 15-2. And I mean, so sloppy for Tennessee. They only had 5 shot attempts in their first 9 possessions in the game. So you kind of deduce what else happened in those other possessions. It was turnovers. And also, in the first half, at least, Vandy ranks 132nd in the country in rebounding nationally. Now, we know where Tennessee is. Tennessee is usually in the top, I think, the top 3, right? They're, I think, number 1 in offensive rebounding. They worked the Vols on the glass in the first half. They took a 10-point lead. And I mean, I felt like at that point, I was like, man, this is going to be trouble for them to try to come back in the second. The other thing was Tennessee, like I mentioned a moment ago, against South Carolina. They only committed 6 turnovers. Even in the Alabama game last week, they only committed 6 turnovers. This game, they had 7 turnovers by halftime. So, I mean, again, it was like a perfect storm of bad stuff happening with this team. And the headliner of it was, we had Nate Amond out, which is obviously a factor, but Jacoby Gillespie, I'll be kind, but that was a subpar performance from him after having some really, really good games. This one, the game against Alabama, I thought he was great. The game against South Carolina, we just mentioned, I thought it was a very diverse type of game for him, but it was really, really good. This was an unmemorable senior day for Jacoby, to be sure.
He's played so much good basketball for Tennessee this year, and I'm willing to give him a pass. It's right. I don't think any player is ever defined by one game, and I think he's made the right stuff. And he'll come back and he'll play really good basketball for Tennessee in the postseason. But yeah, I know he probably was as nauseated as anybody leaving the arena that day, his last game at Thompson-Boling Arena, to play that way. Clearly outplayed by Vandy's guard Tanner, who is a really, really good basketball player, by the way. I mean, that kid is a lot of fun to watch. The guards in this league this year, across the board, and I include Jacoby in that, but some of the guard play, when you look at the A-Cups of the world, I mean, Phylon, a lot of guys that can really go, and Tanner, to me, is right there in that group, the way he
Yeah.
plays and his ability to get his shot. But no, it was a bad game. And I'm sure Jacoby would tell you the same thing. But no, he's played, and he's had a lot on his shoulders. I think that's the thing maybe we forget.
Yeah.
All of us, Bob, sometimes is that kid's played all year with a really more that probably should be on his shoulders, because Tennessee just has not played or have the firepower in the backcourt that a lot of schools they're playing against do. And Jacoby's taken that on. He's played a lot of minutes. He's been called to be the lead guard, to score, to make threes, to distribute the basketball. Twice this year, he's got 8 steals in a game. So certainly he's been able to make things happen on defense too. So I give the guy a pass. We'll see, I think, much closer to what he's made of and who he is in the postseason, because I know what kind of competitor he is. And I'd be shocked if he didn't come back and play a lot of good basketball in the postseason for this team.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you're right about the guard play in the SEC. I mean, we've talked about it all season, whether it's Acuff, Philon. I mean, even Denzel Aberdeen at Kentucky's played really well. Tyler Tanner, who you just mentioned. And by the way, I think it was Bleacher Report. I saw their mock NBA draft. There's a lot of them out there. They've got Jacoby as a kind of back half of the second round projection to get drafted. So, I mean, he's a good player, man. He just he hit a wall on Saturday for whatever reason. 17 points, but pretty inefficient. 5 of 22 from the field, 4 assists, but 5 turnovers. It was rough. But I'll tell you another.
I'll say this: if he doesn't shoot well, Bob, Tennessee can have a hard time winning.
I agree.
Deep into the tournament, if he has a 2 for 11, 1 for 10, 3 for 12 type performance from 3, because the Vols just don't have a lot of other guys. Let's take Amen out of the equation. We'll see where he is health-wise. But they just don't have a lot of the other players who teams are really, really concerned about beating them from the three-point line. They just don't. Now, they will have some guys from time to time who will make threes, but that's what they're going to face the rest of the way. They're going to face it in Nashville. Teams are going to do everything they can to try to take him away. Some teams have been able to do that better than others this year. Some teams haven't. But I think that's the challenge. The real challenge for this team is finding some other guys. And maybe it's your post guys. Maybe your post guys are more effective at finishing, getting to the free throw line down the stretch. But he has had so much on his shoulders as far as being a scorer from the perimeter. That's the thing. People say, what's your biggest concern about this team in the postseason? That would be it, finding somebody else. And maybe that somebody is Nate, if he can come back and play. I never thought – we talked about on this show last Sunday, and I said then I do not expect him to play this week in the regular season. And high ankle sprains are tough to come back from. But I think that would be what would be Jacob. I would put the biggest smile on his face to get a healthy Nate Ament back out there, where teams sort of have to play him a little bit more honestly.
Yeah, I agree. We can hope too, because we need it. So quickly, individually, again, we talked about Jacoby. Amari Evans was a bright spot in this game. The freshman had a season high, career high as of all, 24 points, 6 rebounds, 3 steals. I like what I see with this kid, man. And, looking forward to what he can do in the coming years with Tennessee. They just got to make sure he doesn't get poached.
Yeah, retention. People talk about the portal and adding in the portal.
Yeah.
And the same goes for football too, man. Retention, I think, is about as important, if not more important, because when you get a kid like that, and I think he fits perfectly with what Rick Barnes wants to do.
Yeah.
Being that guy that you can play at a couple different spots, who can defend, who can rebound. He will. If you said who is the guy on this team, the younger player on this team that people are probably going to come after, I would put him right there at the top. And I know that Tennessee will put a premium on keeping him. But no, he has continued to get better. I don't think he's ever going to be one of those guys that is a no-leave guy shooting the basketball, but he can make threes. And he certainly can slash and get to the basket. And he is a terrific, what I call garbage player. And when I say garbage, I mean hustle, getting long rebounds, getting shots in the lane, tough twos, balls coming off the rim, and he gets it and finds a way to navigate his way in there and make the basket. Those type of shots are probably the kind that we forget about. And the game's such a 3-point game right now, Bob, but he gets those type of opportunities simply because he's athletic, he works hard. I think he anticipates well when you watch him go get rebounds. So his development as you look at this team this year, I think has been one of the more encouraging things.
Yeah, he's a dog, man. That's what I see. And to your point, that's tailor-made for what Rick Barnes likes to build within that core of the team, and just got to keep him. JP Estrella had a nice game, 20 points, 9 of 12 shooting, 10 rebounds. That's 2 consecutive 20-plus points games for JP. He's another one, presumably, that's back next year. But those were some of the bright spots in this game. But the Vols had no answer. You mentioned him earlier, Tyler Tanner, man. He's a blast to watch, except when you're playing against him. 25 points, 3 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 steals, just very, very efficient every game he plays. And he's gone from being kind of a role player last year as a freshman to as a sophomore. He is a mid-first round, borderline lottery pick projection in the NBA draft. This kid's special.
Yeah, I think he's the most improved player in the league.
Yeah,
I don't think it's close. I don't know if does the SEC have a most improved player in their postseason awards. He should get it.
Yeah,
because he's made a huge difference in their team. That's a couple times now. Well, in their last 2 losses, Bama and Vandy, the Tennessee struggled to keep guys in front of them. And certainly, and listen, for the record, a lot of teams have struggled to keep Tanner in front of them. A lot of teams have struggled to keep Philon in front of them. Those guys are terrific penetrators, can get their shot. But that's the other thing defensively, where nothing breaks down a defense worse than not being able to stay in front of the basketball. And Tennessee is usually pretty good at that. And to have rim protectors, like a Felix, Akpara, but that's where, you really, if you want to protect your defense and have a chance to clamp down on people, you just got to be able to stay in front of the basketball. And against both Alabama and Vandy, that's been an issue.
Yeah. Last thing I'm going to say about this game, because again, it was kind of like, again, back into the patterns we've seen, unfortunately, all too much this season. Tennessee ended up winning the rebound battle, and they also ended up with less turnovers for the game than Vandy, which it sure didn't look like that was going to be the case in the first half. They had 20 more field goal attempts than Vanderbilt. But first of all, the Vanderbilt Commodores had a 13-point edge at the free throw line. They converted 27 of 32 at the line. This is the one that got to me. The Vols get pinched around the rim again. Tennessee had a 17-7 edge on offensive rebounds. They only converted those offensive rebounds into 9 second chance points. So you think about the percentage there. It's like successful maybe on 4, 5 top opportunities out of 17. And a lot of those are around the rim. So that's bitten us before. It didn't happen in the South Carolina game. It shouldn't have happened in the Vanderbilt game because Vanderbilt's smaller and less physical underneath than Tennessee. But again, it felt like they were up to the challenge in this one. Just one of many losses that we've seen with this team this season, where it's like, we talk about the blown leads, everything else. We talk about how many games. That's another loss. They have 10 now, and I think that's at least the 6th loss where the margin of loss was 4 points or less.
Yeah, they played a lot of close games. And if you want to look for a silver lining, it's not like Tennessee goes into the postseason not used to playing games that go down in the last 2-3 minutes of the game. They played a ton of those.
Yeah,
you go back to the preseason. They beat Houston. Kansas was a close basketball game, and you mentioned in the league play. Outside of really what Arkansas and I'm sure I'm missing one. Florida was not a close basketball game. Tennessee's been right there, and they haven't finished games.
Yeah,
like you want to them. But yeah, you mentioned the free throws. That's the thing. Being able to get to the line and make free throws. It's sort of a 2-pronged process.
Right.
So Vanderbilt makes more free throws, I think, Bob, than Tennessee attempted. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, that's almost always a recipe to lose. When you are playing somebody or you play somebody and you make more shots at the free throw line than they attempt, I'd love to see the percentages of how many times you win the basketball game. And I think, again, that's something else, Tennessee will need to generate. And they have it at certain points this year where they've gotten the line a bunch of times by being strong. I think when you get Ament back, the thing I thought he did best before he got hurt is he really got more assertive at taking the ball to the basket and drawing fouls.
Yeah.
And that's with teams holding him and clinging on to him seemingly all year long. And, you hope maybe he gets a better whistle, in the postseason. But I think having him back helps you generate more of those trips to the free throw line. But you got to make them too. And he's made his, but Tennessee struggled as a whole inside when they've had guys get fouled to go to the free throw line and score. But I think I'm glad you pointed that out, because that's almost always a losing proposition when the opponent makes more free throws than you attempt. So we'll see if Tennessee can rectify that. But I heard Ron Slay, our friend who's joined us here, say, and I agree with him, listen, losing that game to a team the caliber of Vandy is not the end of the world. The start was awful. You certainly can't have a start like that in the tournament. But to me, it's all right, how do they respond? Number one, how do they respond across the board? And number two is, how healthy is Nate Ament when they get to Thursday, which will be their first game of the NCAA SEC tournament in Nashville. And it's a call. I know Rick Barnes well enough, and you do too. There's no way he puts that kid out there,
right,
if he's not really close to 100%. There's just too many bad things that can happen for him, for the team. And I never expected him to play this week. I think down deep, the staff knew he wouldn't play either. Not because Nate didn't want to. I think he desperately wanted to play. But they were not going to put him out there at 70 or 75%. And having some of these days off, I think, as Rick said himself last week, maybe that is a blessing in disguise. But a healthy Nate Ament goes a long way toward helping Tennessee be a team that's capable of making a run, and they know that.
Yeah. Well, so let's kind of frame that up. With that loss, Tennessee gets leapfrogged by Vanderbilt, as I mentioned earlier, for the 4 seed. They fall into the 5 seed, which means they'll get a single bye. Games begin in the SEC tournament on Wednesday night. Tennessee's first game will be on Thursday afternoon. I believe it's 3 p.m. Eastern time, and it's against the winner of Auburn and Mississippi State. So 2 teams that Tennessee has beaten before. Auburn has their backs are against the wall, even no matter how much filibustering and evangelizing that Bruce and Stephen Pearl do. The truth is that team's 16-15. They, for my money, they've got to win out in the conference tournament to get a bid. So they're going to be focused. So if that's who Tennessee plays, that's going to be a tough one. And if they do win that, then they have a rematch with 4 seed Vanderbilt on Friday afternoon. So interesting path forward for this team. They're now 21-10. A lot of bracketology projections. Some still have Tennessee as a 5 seed. They've slid on some to a 6 seed. Either way, I want to get your take on this, Chris. We talked a little bit about it, certainly with the value of Nate Ament and having him back on the floor. But look, Tennessee, the other thing is they still hang in there in terms of the metric-based rankings. They're 14th in Ken Pom, 13th in Bartorovic and Evan Miyakawa, 20th in the net. So, I mean, situated still really well for a 21-10 team. But as they continue to, what I see to be kind of this slow slide in the projections for the field of 68, where do we think they will end up as a seed? Is it a 5 or is it a 6? And what's also, at this point, assuming Nate Ament comes back, what's the realistic postseason runway for this team? I mean, I know it's provisional. You got to look at matchups and everything else, which we don't know. And but we've gotten enough of a sample size for this team, watching them all season long. Do we feel they can string together 2, 3, 4 consecutive really strong games?
I haven't seen a lot of proof that they can do that. I really haven't, to be completely honest. We've seen them play well in stretches. Just take games. We've seen them play outstanding. I go back to that game in Rupp Arena where they just were great the first half.
Yep.
Guys were contributing. It was across the board, and then just lost it in the second half. Same with Alabama at home. So we've seen them do it in stretches, and I wonder inside of a game even if they could put it together. I think they have a much better chance with Nate out there. Here's the thing that you would hate to see if you're Tennessee is him not play, let's say, in that first game and then lose. So then you've had essentially 4 games that he didn't play,
Yep.
Or three of four. No, really four, because he got hurt and didn't play the last half against Alabama.
Right.
And Tennessee would have lost 3 of those games. And so you're going in and you're sort of leaving you're playing, I won't say playing right into the committee's hands, but you're leaving it in their hands. All right, Ament didn't play again. We hope he's going to play in the NCAA tournament, but without him, we've looked like a pretty average basketball team. Does that really drop their seed? Because they will consider, if a player's out or they think he might be out, that will be considered when they do the seeding. So I do think if Tennessee can get him back healthy, though, they've proven in all the close games you pointed out that they've got a chance to play well. I'm going to say something that's going to sound crazy. I think if Tennessee does indeed play Auburn, and you're right, Auburn's got to win as many as they possibly can, or they're not getting in. They're going to be watching from home. But I think if Auburn does win, I got this funny feeling that game is going to be even tougher than if Tennessee were to win and play Vandy that next game. There's something about that Auburn game. It's the Pearl and them playing for their lives, and Tennessee having just lost to Vandy. If they do get past Auburn, Bob, I think Tennessee will be ready to play in that game. So that Auburn game in a lot of ways would scare me more as you're a Tennessee fan than the Vandy game. So, but you don't get the Vandy, unless you beat Auburn and even State. State's got the Hubbard kid who's capable of scoring 40 in any game. So it's I'm just being honest. I haven't seen what I would say is a lot of proof from this team that they can put 2 or 3 really good games together against quality teams. Tennessee has lost some close games against good teams. They beat Houston back in the non-conference, but in the conference, most of Tennessee's wins have come against the lower tier teams. And I don't know what that means, if that really means anything at this point. Their best win certainly was Alabama. That was a quality win. And I think the win at Vandy certainly looks good. But so I just want to see where they are health-wise, Bob, how they're playing, how they bounce back. I do think this team has made the right stuff, that they've got a lot of pride. They're going to come back and play well. We'll see, because as you know, man, you get to this point of the year. And the other thing, too, the SEC is every day. You don't get any days in between. You don't get that rest.
Right.
And going back to a guy like Jacoby Gillespie, if they do play, let's say, 3 straight games, or at least 3 straight games, which is good because, Tennessee's advancing. It's a lot of wear and tear on him as you get ready to go into the NCAA. Do you play Thursday in the NCAA? Do you play Friday? If you have to turn around, fly out to Portland, fly out to San Diego. I don't know about you, most of what I've seen, projections, and keep in mind they're just projections. A lot of them have Tennessee going to San Diego or Portland.
Yeah. I back to what you said a second ago, and that's why I brought up Auburn specifically. They've got that whole wounded animal vibe going into the conference tournament, and we know that they have talent, right? They got Pettiford, they have Keyshawn Hall, they've got guys. They just haven't been able to mesh and convert it into. They've been on a pretty healthy losing streak as well. So this is going to be very interesting. I'm assuming that they would take down Mississippi State, and I agree with you. That could be a tougher game than a rematch against Vanderbilt, to be honest with you, particularly if we have Nate. So we'll have to watch and see. But it's going to be very interesting. I love it. But I'm hoping that the Vols can do a little bit of work in the conference tournament, and then also in the field of 68. For me, if we can get to the Sweet 16, the second weekend, anything beyond there would be obviously great. But then that feels like we keep the streak alive for this program. That'll be 4 consecutive Sweet 16s. Of course, the 2 Elite Eights that followed in the past 2 years. That'd be a pretty good accomplishment, given the way this team was definitely it was hampered in some areas. Let's put it that way.
I don't want to paint like this awfully bleak picture that this team's not capable, because I think they have shown in stretches that they can play good basketball. But the tournament is it's every possession matters, and every 5 or 6 minute timeout matters. And this team has just seemed to play sporadically at times. And that would be the thing that would worry me the most as a Tennessee fan. And what we've seen, though. I go back to, you mentioned Mississippi State 2 years ago. Tennessee played awful against Mississippi State in the first round of the SEC tournament and lost badly.
Yeah.
That would have been the Dawn Connect year, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
Correct me if I'm wrong. And then they get to the final eight, and really played Purdue toe to toe. In fact, I think, and I use this line a lot, I think Zach Edey is still in the lane 2 years later. But
yeah,
I'm sorry, I can't resist. But
no, that's fair.
So sometimes you can't, sometimes the conference tournament, is weird. Tennessee got to the final last year and hung around. I mean, Florida was the best team in the country. They proved it. Hung around. I think got within 4 points or 5 points a couple times. Just couldn't, and still get to the final eight. So my point is, how are you playing when you play that first game? What are the matchups? You mentioned to me, speaking of Purdue, you said you saw one projection that would have Tennessee playing Purdue in the second round if they make the second round. I don't know that Tennessee wants to see Purdue again.
No,
in any postseason environment. It's almost like the curse of the Boilermaker.
Yeah, no doubt. Yes, I did see that. Where Tennessee was a 6 seed, Purdue was a 3 seed. So if the stars aligned, that's who they'd be playing. Yeah. Not to mention, that's also the region that they were situated in, where Florida is the 1 seed. So tough road all the way.
I think 5 versus 6. I will say this: 4, 5. I don't know if there's a lot of difference in 4 versus 5 seeds. Yeah, because you're technically would be playing the 5 if you're the 4. If you're the 5, you're playing the 4. Sure. And then you're matched up if chalk holds against the 1 seed. There is that sort of 5. If you believe in jinxes, there's that 5-12 jinx if you're the 5. There's some stat about how many 12 seeds have beaten the 5 seed going back 25 years. It happens more than you would think. But I think in the grand scheme of things, 4 versus 5. Now 6, then you're potentially playing. You're playing 11 seed. I want to say Michigan. When Michigan upset Tennessee in Indy a few years ago, Michigan was the 11. They were one of the last teams in, and I think they might have been the 11 seed. Well, Michigan was one of those teams that was talented but just didn't play well that year.
Right,
they played a lot better those first few rounds. So you could get an 11 seed certainly. It'd be pretty good. But the big thing, if you get by that, you're playing a 3 seed. You're playing a top 10 team in the country. I don't know who that would be. Would that be it could be like a Purdue or someone like that, a Virginia.
Like a Purdue, a Gonzaga, Virginia. I mean, there's some really
I just think 4 makes to me, I don't think there's a big difference, whatever this is worth, in 4 versus 5 as much as it is 6 versus 4 or 5. I think 6 makes it a much tougher draw.
Yeah. Well, we have a little more basketball to talk about, but first I want to say a few words about our sponsor, the Tate Insurance Group. These folks, and Chris can tell you firsthand, I mean, they're fantastic. They are your local insurance team, and they're proud to call East Tennessee home. Just like our Vols, they know what it takes to give their all, overcome obstacles, and show true volunteer spirit for our community. From home and auto to business coverage, they provide personal service that you can count on. And again, they care about what you care about, because this is where they live too. The Tate Insurance Group, local, trusted, always in your corner, right here at home. If you want to learn more about them, you can give them a call. Scott and the crew would be happy to take your call and tell you more about their services and their products. Their phone number is area code 865-862-8233. That's 865-862-8233. Or you can also find them online, learn more about them that way. TateInsuranceGroup.com. That's the Tate Insurance Group. Good people, man. Good people.
Yep. I've known Scott a long time, and he's had my insurance, all of it, for about as long as I can remember. And I have never had one bad experience with him. When I've had to put a new roof, we had that hailstorm that came through a few years ago, put a new roof on my home, or issues with my vehicles. And here's the thing I like the best about them, Bob. When you call, they know exactly who you are. They know exactly, you don't have to go through 2 or 3 layers. They know exactly who you are. They know what you need, and it's done. It's been a terrific experience with them over the years.
Yeah, good folks. Good folks. All right, back to basketball. We'll get a little baseball in before we wrap the show up, but this topic certainly deserves some time. And we talked about uneven play with the men's team and some of the frustrations there. Well, I'd say with Lady Vol basketball, it's kind of reaching a whole new level. The Lady Vols are dismissed early and, frankly, in embarrassing fashion by Alabama in the SEC tournament a couple nights ago. Now, for reference, CeeLo, Alabama was a team that the Lady Vols beat by 11 points on the road earlier this season. They lose this one to the Tide by 12 points. The loss notwithstanding, it's everything else that's happening around this program now that has everyone's attention. The Lady Vols are now 16-13, 7-game losing streak, losses in 10 of their last 12 games. They're still very likely to get an NCAA tournament bid. Their strength of schedule is the third strongest in college basketball for women. But my question's starting to become who's going to play for them, because the acrimony and discord on this team has become very, very, very evident. And it feels like Kim Caldwell isn't able to rein it in right now and get back to playing winning basketball. And we know Danny White gave Kim a vote of confidence. But as this continues to unravel, I think the question is, can Kim make it to the other side of a third season on Rocky Top? And even if she does, can she really meet the expectations of success that come with this program?
I heard Danny's interview on the local radio, and honestly, when I heard him say that she's doing a great job, is there anybody out there who really believes that? Is there anybody who watched this team play that think that she's done a great job? Now, that's not to beat up on Kim too much. She is in her second season. This is a pressure cooker of a job. She'd been at Marshall for a year. I don't know that Tennessee's the kind of job you ever want to bring anybody into that you sort of have to grow on the job or learn on the job, I should probably say, Bob. So I don't. Sure. That was. I think a lot of people, not just me, a lot of people who love that program, who followed it for ages, heard that and said, "Whoa, a great job." I don't know. I have a lot of do-overs in my life, things I've said and done that I wish I had. Danny probably wishes he had a do-over on that one. The vibe on and around that team is awful right now. It's terrible. I don't know any other way to say it than that. And it's not just because they've lost 7 games, but there's acrimony, as you said, within the team, in the locker room. Players are being left at home and not going. Players put on the bench. I don't know right now. You don't necessarily have to love your coach, but you have to know that coach is going to push you and challenge you as much as they possibly can and is invested in you. And it's got to be a two-way street. And that doesn't seem to be the case right now.
Yeah.
I don't know that Kim's having, she just looks almost miserable on the sideline. And those players do too. I don't know how many of them are going to be back next year, whatever happens. I know there's a lot of chatter out there. Will Danny fire? It doesn't sound like he's going to. If he comes out and says that she's doing a great job, but there will be a mass exodus out of that program. They're going to need a lot of new players to bring in next year. Can she get it fixed? I don't know. I mean, it would probably be. I haven't followed that program this year close enough to really make a judgment. But I've watched them a lot down the stretch. And there's a disconnect. I think it's probably the fairest word to say, Bob. Mm-hmm. There's a disconnect with her and her players and within that program right now. And I think anybody, whether you've played NBA basketball or maybe gone out and dribbled 4 or 5 times and shot some hoops in your driveway, would be able to see that.
Yeah, and I have to say, I think I talked to you about this earlier, and I've talked about it on the radio too. I was at their senior day when they played Vanderbilt last weekend, and I could see it. They were paying tribute to the seniors, and she's out there with the players. And it said a lot to me because with each player, she would race to give them their framed jersey, kind of a nice touch, take a picture with the player and their parents. She'd smile, put on a very fake smile. The minute the smile is over, she's back to business, pats the player on the shoulder. It's not a hug. It's nothing else. You were at senior day yesterday with Rick and Jacoby and the boys. You see that's what you see at most senior days. I did not see that with the Lady Vols. And what it told me is, again, part of it's a byproduct of this era we are in now with NIL and the transfer portal. A lot of these players, man, there's no relationship. It's like hired guns. And so the money is one thing, but if the style of play, the 5 in, 5 out concept she does with the line changes, if that starts to not set well with you as a player in this era, the kind of players that gave their all for 4 years at a place, and man, what was it? I saw across college basketball, this is men's college basketball, across the power conferences in total, on senior days, there were 22 seniors across the country that had spent 4 years at that school. And I mean, that's where we are. And so these players are like, okay, it's not just money. If I don't like the style of play, I'm getting out of here. And I just think between all of that, and I have been very vocal saying, with all due respect to Danny White, all the good stuff he's done as athletic director, I feel he's a little culpable here because he hired Kim, took a chance on her. She had 1 year of D1 experience at a mid-major level. You got to equip her with other things because we've also seen it. I mean, she needs, in my humble opinion, she needs help with media. She needs help with alumni, donors, the former Lady VFLs. I mean, all of this stuff, it's getting out now, and that just amplifies the challenges she's having with the team in general.
Yeah, and again, I think it's pretty obvious. I don't think there's sometimes teams don't play well, and we all, I'm guilty of it, fans, media, reading things into something that aren't really there.
Yeah.
Because again, I don't go to practice. I'm not in her locker room, but there's too many people that I'm close with that are, in some cases, ladies who played in that program and that have, expressed to me, and I think same to you and others, just some of the things that have happened. Some words players have had with her, some blatant disrespect issues in the locker room. I mean, Tanisha Cooper. I mean, listen, you watched that whole thing play out the other day.
Yeah.
Clearly there. I mean, does she play? Do you play her the rest of the way? Does she want to come back and play? Can they mend that before they play in the NCAA tournament? I don't know. I mean, I don't know how you do some of the things that have happened. And everybody on the team is watching that. Everybody on the team is sort of watching that situation, how it plays out. It's a hard deal. I don't think this is something that just happened. I think this has been brewing, these situations. And I think it's sometimes when that snowball starts to roll downhill, you can't stop it. And I think now, to me, it's much bigger than people talk about her system and her style, and she's got to quit pressing all the time or 5 in and 5 out. That's all well and good. I was there. Like her biggest moment last year was against Connecticut when they beat UConn. Right. I was at that game. And remember talking to Gino about it after the game, and he talked about that style and how novel it was, and people were going to have a hard time, if she could continue to recruit to it, and because it's just not something you see all the time. Mm-hmm. But when things don't work, when you do have to make adjustments, to me, the best coaches are the ones that can fix it, can figure out a way with what they've got. Because you can't go to quote remember the old Bill Parcells line during the middle of the season? He said, you can't go call 1-800-quarterback. Well, you can't go call 1-800 whatever right now. You got to figure out a way maybe to play differently, tweak it, and fix it. And that's what we haven't seen happen down the stretch with this team. And now you've got at least one more chance. I feel I'd be shocked if they don't make the tournament, just in brand alone, which they've never, ever not made the tournament, which would be, you talk about a streak of all streaks to be broken. If they did somehow get left out of this tournament, it'd be the first time that's ever happened. Yeah. And but I do expect them to be in it, and probably an 8/9 seed ball, I guess, which means you're going to be probably playing somebody that you're very comparable to. And if you do win that, you're going to have to play a number 1 seed.
Right.
We see teams get it right sometimes in a tournament. I don't see anything from this team that makes me think that they're going to be able to do that.
No. And I don't know if it's a blessing or a curse. They don't, they don't even know their fate for another week. So I agree with you. I think they're going to get into the tournament. I don't have a whole lot of confidence based on what I'm seeing recently, unless she can turn around the locker room pretty quickly. I'm not even sure they get past the first round game. But
listen, good for her if she can. I don't think anybody's rooting against Kim.
No, I agree.
I don't think people love that Lady Vol program. It has been for decades one of the shining lights when it comes to the University and Tennessee athletics. And she's the third coach since Pat, and I don't care how many times you go back to Bear Bryant football, took Alabama forever to get it right. Mm-hmm. And with programs and giants like that in the coaching profession, sometimes, man, it just takes a while. And I'm not carrying water for Kim. I mean, I think a lot of people desperately want to see her succeed, desperately want to see that program back where they are a legitimate top 5 type program. And, Holly Warwick had them in the Final Eight a couple times.
Yep.
That wasn't good enough. And now here we are. And I think we know what the standard is, the standard that Pat built. So I don't, you hear people say things about, well, what NIL she is getting versus what she's not getting and what they should have done for Tony in baseball. I mean, I think to me, all that is not doing anybody good, because I think most people who really care about Tennessee want to see Kim, the coach, whoever it is in the program, do well. And we'll see. I think we're called to be honest and candid. And right now they're nowhere close to being near the standard of what Tennessee women's basketball has been, as I said, for decades.
Yeah. Yeah. And the last thing I'll say to put a bow on this is, and I agree with you, I think we all want to see, I would think Kim's going to be back for a 3rd season, and who knows, maybe she can get this thing turned around. But, Danny White made a comment on that same radio interview that this, as he put it, we never thought this was going to be a quick fix. Well, her first year, Sweet 16, right? I mean, I think that's a pretty good start. I had no problem with that. You come in with the top recruiting class in the country this year, a lot of money spent on NIL. You expect more. You just do. So this is not, you say it's not a quick fix. Okay, well, this is not a level of progression. This is going backwards, in my opinion, based on what we saw in her first year. So
yeah, and I would say this. We all are guilty. I've been guilty of revisionist history sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
I would invite you to go back and listen to Danny's press conference when they hired her. It was a little bit different than saying that no one expected a quick fix, because I think it was pretty clear that he expected right away this program to be nationally relevant. So again, sometimes we all have said things in the past and we come back and maybe tweak them a little bit depending on what the situation is. But this is a program that should always be in there fighting for championships.
Yeah, I totally agree on all of that. All right. Last thing before we go today, a little Vol baseball to talk about, because big week for the boys. Very, very busy. 5 games this past week. It started with midweek wins against ETSU and Oakland. Both were pretty decisive. I think the ETSU game, the Vols win 7-1, and then Oakland, the Tennessee just smashed them. They wrapped it up with a tightly contested each game for the most part, except for the 3rd game maybe. But they had a weekend series win over Wright State, winning 2 of the 3 games. And the boys have one more midweek game coming up this week on Tuesday against Tennessee Tech, followed by their first SEC series for this season over the weekend on the road against number 11 ranked Georgia. CeeLo, just a quick take from you on what you've seen bits and pieces this week with the team. I would say, to me, the return of Blake Grimmer and Garrett Wright was incredibly important, because hitting seems to be where this team's challenged.
And will continue to be, because they're going to need both those sticks in the lineup. And certainly as they get rolling and have a chance to get their feet up under them as they get into SEC play, you're absolutely right. I've seen this team play a lot this year. The pitching has been pretty good for the most part, certainly the starting pitching. I think Tennessee will go into weekend with 3 guys they feel pretty confident about.
Yeah.
And then the bullpen, there have been some ups and some downs. It's the hitting right now. The thing that jumps out at me is they're seeing. Listen, Wright State's a really good team, and they take 2 or 3 from Wright State. Now, Wright State is not an SEC team, nor was Kent State, who won the series against Tennessee. Both those teams are what you would call really good mid-major type baseball teams. It's not like they're playing teams that have no chance. But I will say this: the SEC arms that Tennessee is going to face are way above anything they've seen, maybe outside of what they saw in Texas with UCLA. They're going to see pitching that is much better than they've seen to this point, and they have not hit very consistently at all. They've had some big hits, some key hits, some walk-off wins where guys put the bat on the ball in clutch situations, but being able to string runs together, hits together, that's been their problem, and they haven't at times been able to catch up with fastballs where guys are throwing 89, 90, 91 miles an hour. Well, guess what? In SEC play, you're going to see a lot of 94, 95, 96, 97. And if you're having trouble catch up with those fastballs at 89 or 90, what's that tell you about the SEC? Now, I think hitting is one of those things that once it starts to heat up, pardon the pun, and you get into a little bit of a roll, get into that grind, some rhythm, you start to hit better, and it's contagious. When one or two guys start hitting, everybody else starts hitting. I still think this team's got a great chance to make the NCAA tournament, but they're just not the same team that we've seen as far as playing King Kong ball that we saw under Tony, and that's hitting home run after home run, and that doesn't seem to be the makeup of this team. Can they get to closer to that point? Yeah, I think so. I mean, listen, the guy that was the biggest key in them hitting the baseball the way they had the last few years was Josh Elander. He's still there. And people say, well, Frank, the pitching coach, they miss him. Well, and they do. But the pitching really has not been the issue to this point. It's been able to hit the baseball and score runs.
Yeah. Quick note about Wright State, like you said, the one thing I would say, they have wins against, Tennessee now, but also Kent State in a midweek game. And they also took a game in a 3-game series against Georgia, who Tennessee's getting ready to play this weekend coming up. So they're, I believe, the preseason favorites in the Horizon Conference. So again, to your point, they're not SEC teams, neither them or Kent State. But those are two teams we might see in the field of 64 come spring for, the college baseball playoffs. So I think that these are good teams, but Tennessee is going to have to level up a little bit. The one thing I'll say is we had Josh Elander on the radio a couple of days ago, and we talked about this. The one thing I'm struck by with this team, because I don't remember in recent memory where Tennessee has had so much position versatility. You got Garrett Wright, who can catch but play outfield and play it well. You've got the whole situation in the middle infield where you have Jay Abernathy, who can play second, but you also have Manny Marin, and you have Antigua, and you have Chris Newstrom. And I mean, and Josh is viewing that as, hey man, who wants to eat? He's like, he wants to have a competition for all these jobs. And that's great, but it's going to have to happen at the plate, clearly, because that's definitely an area of, at the moment, it's an area of weakness. We'll see if it can improve.
Yeah. Well, it gives him some flexibility when he's making his lineup out.
Yeah.
Who's hitting. If you can move guys around to different positions, you're not sort of pigeonholed, we don't have anybody else can play third base or center field, and that will give him more flexibility. And I think that will be vital for them as they go forward. Just trying to find the right guys to get in there in the batting order every day to score some runs. It's way too early but baseball, even more so than basketball. You start drawing hard and fast judgments on teams in early March in baseball, certainly in the SEC. You can find yourself looking silly at the end of the season. I always go back to Ole Miss winning it all a few years ago, and they just barely got into the NCAA tournament. So it's getting hot at the right time, staying healthy, and having your bats get going. And I still think Tennessee's got enough good bats that they will get it going at some point. But boy, in the SEC, you just don't win a lot of 2-1, 4-3 games. You really don't. Yeah. You've got to be willing, or I should say, you got to be capable of scoring 7, 6, 8, 9 runs if you're going to win a lot of those games in the SEC.
Yeah, and the last thing I'll say, we talked about the Georgia series. Their first 3 series in SEC play, CeeLo, at Georgia, at home against Missouri, which they should, you would think, take care of business there, and then at Vanderbilt. Now, Vanderbilt's off to a choppy start, to be honest with you, but it is Vanderbilt, and it's on the road. So we're going to learn pretty quickly, I'd say, in these next 2 to 3 weekends what to expect with this bunch. So it's going to be fun, though. That much we know. There's a lot happening. Well, that does it for this week. Another episode in the books. We appreciate you giving us a watch or listen. As always, many thanks to our great sponsor, the Tate Insurance Group. Always appreciate their support. I would say to everybody listening and watching, make sure you check us out on, if you're watching us on the Rocky Top Insider YouTube channel, make sure you like and subscribe. That helps us grow. If you're listening to us as a podcast, we appreciate that as well. Just make sure you download us. We are available wherever you listen to your podcast. Make us part of your regular rotation because we love doing this, keeping you up to date on what's happening. We'll be back next week to recap the SEC tournament performance by the Tennessee men's team. We'll break down the NCAA tournament assignments for both the Vols and presumably the Lady Vols. And then we'll check in with a recap of Vol baseball, who, like we said, kicking off SEC play with that weekend series on the road at Georgia. As always, we have it covered for you here during the week at Rocky Top Insider. Keep it locked in here, RockyTopInsider.com, and all socials for what we feel is the best Tennessee Vol coverage anywhere. Chris, always appreciate you, man. Enjoy doing this show with you. Hope you have a great, great week ahead and look forward to doing the next one.
Okay. Same here, Bob. Look forward to you. Maybe I'll see you in Nashville this week at the SEC tournament, or maybe not. We'll see.
Never know. But fun time of year, I'll tell you that. I love doing it and checking it out and talking about it. So we'll do more of that the next time around. Again, thanks to you all for watching. We'll look forward to joining you right here again next time on the RTI Lowdown.